Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Courageously Encouraged. I am just so happy you're here today joining me for another video. It's been a few weeks, but we're back at it. This semester was really tough. It was one of the hardest semesters I've ever gone through before. And I've been through about 14 semesters through my master's, my bachelor's, and then now this PhD. And this was one of the hardest ones before the pandemic. So imagine now on top of it, I got to transition to virtual classes, and I still have 4 graduate aerospace engineering courses. But somehow, some way, in 1 year, 2 semesters, 8 graduate courses, aerospace engineering, I was able to fulfill my course requirement for my PhD. And even this semester, I was able to get a 4.0 and I got all A's. So my cumulative GPA throughout this whole 2 semesters are 3.85, which is pretty crazy. Being out of school for 2 years, coming back into school, having that crazy of a course load over 2 semesters, and it's all thanks to God. I had to give him all the glory and the praise and thanks in this situation and this great thing that's happened. And just have to thank my friends and family, everybody in my life who encouraged me and prayed for me. So I'm just so thankful. So as you can see, I'm already beginning this video with giving God the glory, showing you a practical example of what it means to give God glory, because James 1:17 says that every good and perfect gift comes from above, coming down from the Father of heavenly lights, who does not change like shifting shadows. So we already know, like, these good gifts that are coming into my life, they're from God. And I have to thank him for them. Getting out of the bed is almost like a miracle. Like, I didn't put the breath in my lungs. I didn't start my heart. I didn't make it so that I survived the night. Not everybody did, unfortunately. And so I have to thank God for one more day on this earth. And in the Bible, it talks about how if there's breath in my lungs, that means there's purpose for me to do on this earth. And, Paul tells us exactly how we should live our life in 1 Corinthians 10:31 that says, whether you eat or drink, whatever you do, do it to the glory of God. So we should be all living lives that are bringing God glory, doing things that glorify him. And then when good things come into our lives, giving him the praise and the glory that he deserves. He's the creator of this universe. So we have to thank him. And there is some biblical evidence of what can happen when you withhold the glory that is deserved unto God. And so one story that really stands out to me is in Numbers 20. I encourage you to read it. It's like Numbers 22 through 13. I'll put the verses that you need to read. But the main essence of the story is we have Moses, who is somebody that was called by God, has been leading the Israelites out of Egypt, out of slavery, out of bondage. Parted the Red Sea. We're going through it, coming out to the other side. They go into this wilderness. They're disobedient to God. They wander. Moses is still leading them, dealing with all their grumblings against God. They build the golden calf. They do all of these awful things. God brings literally manna from heaven, quail out of nowhere, makes the bitter waters sweet, does all these amazing things for them, and yet they still grumble. Why would you take us out of Egypt? Like, what? You were a slave. What are you talking about? He's about to bring you into the promised land. And so that's a whole other story in its own, that wanting to go back to your Egypt instead of going into your promised land. So anyways, but I'm going to stay focused on this one. And so basically, you look at this whole time Moses has been leading them to the promised land. He was supposed to bring them in. And there's an exchange in Numbers 22 through 13 or whatever it is. Like I said, I'll link it, or I'll make it pop up on the screen. But what happens here is that Moses is upset because the congregation is grumbling against God again. And they're like, we got no water to drink. We're thirsty. Like, again, they say, have you just brought us out of Egypt so that we die here? We might as well have just died in Egypt. And basically, so Moses leaves, him and Aaron, they go before the congregation, they leave the congregation, they go before God. And basically God says, go and strike this rock with your staff and water will come out of it. Now that doesn't make any sense to me. That is like God's asking him to do a miracle. So just keep in mind that what God is asking Moses to do doesn't even make any sense. Like, Moses doesn't have the power to bring water out of a rock. That's something that only God can do. Okay. So Moses goes before the congregation, and it's very important that you really are very cognizant of the words that he uses. And basically he says, shall we bring water from this rock? Him and Aaron. And the water comes from the rock, and basically immediately after it, God says, because you did not uphold me as holy before the eyes of the people of Israel, you will not enter into the promised land. So think about it, let that set in. Moses, He's been leading the Israelites for so many years, decades. The whole goal was to get them into their promised land. And he got upset with them. And in that moment of anger with the Israelites, maybe deservedly so, because they just keep grumbling against God, he took the glory. He took and said, shall we bring water from this rock? And like I said, that doesn't make any sense. Moses doesn't have any power within himself to do that. It's obviously God. And also think about what God says. Like I said, I encourage you to read it. But God says, because you did not uphold me as holy before the eyes of the people of Israel, you will not enter into the promised land. So I just want to warn you, because while the Old Testament and the New Testament are kind of different within, which covenant we were under the Old Testament, we're under the Old Covenant, and because of what Jesus Christ did, we're under the New Covenant. That doesn't change who God is, right? It changes our access, how we come before him. In the Old Testament, it was through shedding blood of animals, and the high priest had to go into the Holy of Holies. But Jesus died, he tore the veil, and he was the sacrifice that lets us enter, I believe it's Hebrews says, we can enter boldly, right? So just kind of that's a whole different sermon in its own, just how we access God different. But his character is the same between the Old Testament and the New Testament. So we just see Moses basically forfeit his ability to lead them into the promised land. And if you keep reading, it's Joshua who actually brings them into the promised land. Joshua is a great book in the Bible to read about, courage and strength and obedience, and just God fighting battles and winning victories. So that's another great book of the Bible. But yeah, I just want to really just point out, every good and perfect gift is from God, and everything that we do, even when we eat and drink, we should be doing it to bring God glory, because he's good and he deserves it. And Moses, now God is so good and so gracious, and he didn't have to do this, but if you keep reading, he actually leads Moses up onto a mountain and at least lets him look into the promised land and see it before he dies. But yeah, Moses didn't get to go into the promised land, because in that moment he took the glory that was deserved to God, because God did that. Moses didn't do that. So it leads me back, coming from where I'm from, having ADHD, coming from a single mother household for many years, low income, first generation, my parents don't have college degrees. For me to be able to get a 4.0 in 4 graduate aerospace engineering courses during this pandemic, to me, God deserves all the glory for that. And I'm not going to withhold it. And it's not just because necessarily I don't want to be disciplined like Moses was, but God deserves it. He really is a good God. And so I just hope I encourage you today to give God glory in your situations. Don't take the glory for yourself. Don't give yourself the praise. Give him the praise. You don't even know how many hairs there are on your head. You didn't even really wake yourself up this morning. You didn't even get yourself protected through all these life events. You literally think about all the different ways that you could have stumbled and fallen and gotten sick or hurt or something like that. And, I'm 27. It's dang. I lived 27 years without anything severely hurting or injuring or killing me. I mean, that to me is almost like a miracle. So I just want to thank God for my life, and I just want to thank God for you, and I hope you have a good day.